Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's Workshop. So today I'm going to get started on creating actual dishes for the wedding reception for Marguerite and Sadi. Now, I did start the food prep part 1, and I will leave a link in the description for that. But now this is part 2, where I'm actually going to get into actually creating some of the dishes. Now, in the previous video, I did create the base of some of the cakes, and I pre-baked some of the clay that I would need for different dishes. I'll also be using some fruit and vegetable pieces from some little packets my daughter purchased for me off of Timo. Now here I am crumbling up some of the lettuce or cabbage leaves, and here I am also cutting up some small red skinnies to be seasonings. Now I did roll out some clay and cut it into little circles to give the impression of crackers. Now, I kind of got everything prepped. And dolls, I'm not real specific about what I'm making. I'm merely trying to create the impression of certain foods or dishes. Now, I did consider using these little pieces to be like doilies inside the plates, but let me stay focused. Now, although I really like these platters, I thought a couple of them would look nice if they were painted a silver color. Now, dolls, this little tray I'm painting was actually a broken earring that I glued a piece of card to the bottom of it, and now I'm painting it with my Testors silver paint, so it'll be a platter. So while those items dry, let me show you a couple of my recipes. Now, I do use the solid polymer clay and liquid polymer clay as either cake icing or mayonnaise, but you can also use old acrylic paint. This bottle of paint has been around since 2007, so it's good and thick. It almost looks like whipped cream, and you see how it looks there in that frame. So I'm going to show you both ways how to use these different techniques. Now here's the leftover icing from when I did the cakes, and these are my platters. One I painted silver. I think that looks really nice. But this gold one, I'm going to flip it the other way around and actually glue it to a piece to create sort of like a stand. And I did use my Gorilla super glue gel to glue it. Just put a little bit on the top. Always be really careful. Don't get it on your hands. I should have had gloves on. Sorry, Laura. Now I'm going to allow that to dry, but I think it's going to really be cute when I get all the food and things on it and arranged. So let me allow that to dry. Now here are my little eggs that I made in part 1. They turned out really nice, but I didn't think the yolks were big or yellow enough, so I mixed some of that thick acrylic paint with some yellow to make the yolks bigger. Now, when I was growing up, I always remember spring and summer wedding receptions. I always had a lot of cold salads. Cold turkey or chicken salad was at the top of the list. Now, I baked the translucent clay and broke it up in small pieces, and then I mixed it with what was left of the icing from the cakes. And it gives the impression of mayonnaise. Now, you can put as little or as much other little ingredients in it to add more color. Now, I started on another salad where I had a lot of little pieces of red and green. I really didn't put meat in here, but I used mostly what looked like leaves or some type of vegetable. And after I got it in with the icing and began to break up some of the little pieces of egg, and dolls, I was literally using little bits and pieces of anything, because when you think about salads or cold relish type salads, all you see is little bits. You see little red pepper, a little green pepper, or little pieces of onion and radishes and beets. So you really don't see the actual full piece of vegetable. So you can really let your imagination run wild when you're working on a project like this. Now, when you're mixing it, if your mixture gets too dry, you can add a little additional, either the white or the translucent liquid clay. And again, it's acting as your salad dressing. And it's really amusing to me how it coats the little pieces of clay to really give it the impression of cold salad. I really enjoy making food dishes in miniature because to me it really allows for a lot of creative freedom, because in this small scale, to me everything doesn't have to be perfectly defined. It just needs to give the impression. Now I really wanted there to be quite a bit of selection or variety on the buffet table at the wedding reception. So I found some little spare pieces in an old food project that I had done. And I really want to urge you, dolls, to save your leftover or spares from previous projects. Now these are some clay pieces that I made when I was making the jars of food for the rooming house pantry. And I will leave a link in the description to that video. But these are some leftover pieces, and I put in some little red pieces and squeezed in some of the liquid clay, liquid translucent clay, and the white liquid clay, and just mixed it up. So this is sort of like maybe olives and broccoli and cucumbers. Now I did have some little pieces left over from those bits of fruit from the little Timu bags that actually look like cucumbers or little slices of squash, and I thought that looked really interesting. And I allowed it to get really coated and put it in kind of a metal like aluminum bowl, and I thought that looked nice. Now keep in mind all of these items except for those cucumbers and things are polymer clay, so these salads need to be baked. So I made sure these items were in containers that could go in the oven. Now, before I put the salads in, I felt like I needed to make a little bit of cheese. You always have cheese on a reception table. Now, dolls, again, I'm not being super specific with these little items. I'm just playing around. I'm going to wrap this little red clay around the kind of orange colored clay to make it look as though it's that wax coating on the outside. And then when I trimmed off the little excess part, I took the little clay and created like a little ball and just rolled it around in my hands to make sure it fully covered the orange part of the clay. After the little ball was complete, I flattened it. I did use some gloves so I wouldn't leave my fingerprints in the piece. And then I cut out a few little triangles and some slices to make it look as though they had cut the cheese and sliced a few pieces to lay on the tray. So I want to encourage you, dolls, that if you decide to do some food projects, keep it pretty simple. You know, don't worry about adding a lot of hyper, super intense detail. Do some basics, keep it simple, and always include the fun. Now, at this point, I have to admit things were just starting to get out of hand. I didn't know whether I was making cheese or spinach dip, but I mixed a lot of colors together with some white clay, and I added some black clay and some green clay and just kept cutting it in as though I was cutting in butter to make pie crust. But after a while, I stopped and I considered adding it to a bowl, but I realized the bowl was plastic and I wouldn't be able to bake the clay in it. Finally, I rolled out the little pieces, cut them in chunks, and sliced them to just be cheese on a cheese platter along with some Swiss and the red and orange cheese. After that's baked, it'll be fun to arrange it. And here are my little eggs after I've added the additional yolks with the paint. And I'm just arranging them on that little platter that I painted a little bit earlier. Now this was really a lot of fun. I really like the way the eggs look now with the bigger yolks. Now here I'm adding a little bit of tacky glue to that gold platter that I added the little pedestal to so that I can begin to arrange my cheese. Now, I probably put way too much glue on this platter, but I don't want my cheese pieces to come up. The tacky glue does dry clear. And I just little by little, using my precision tweezers, I place my little pieces of cheese around the big red wedge. Now, a project like this, you can piddle around with it as little or as long as you like. There are so many different ways to arrange things. You can actually look at pictures for inspiration, but free yourself. The objective is not perfection. You want to have fun. You want to arrange the food in a way that you would arrange it if you were celebrating or setting up for a party. And if you set it up in a way you don't like, you can change it, rearrange it, or do it over. It's just tacky glue and clay. I just really want you dolls to enjoy the fun and freedom of creating without the fear of making mistakes or even the fear of failure. It's all a part of learning. And regardless to how your early food creations turn out, your dolls will be very grateful to have it on their table. Now, after I got done piddling around with the little 3-cheese tray, I did have the issue of those crackers. Now, with the crackers, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I'm not sure how much that even looks like crackers. The clay was kind of translucent, but I actually used some of those little marbly pieces of cheese. And here are my little eggs with the additional yolks, and I had to add a little bit of red to give the impression of the absolutely necessary paprika. Now, dolls, if you enjoyed this video today, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, like, share, and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.